Hi guys, it's Jess from Honest Fiction, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing my March wrap-up. Alright guys, so I ended up reading 23 books in March. Most of the books were fantasy romance, however I did read a decent amount of dark and contemporary romance. I will warn you, for some reason, I was really feeling emotional romances in the very beginning of March, so the contemporary romances are a bit depressing. I sobbed on the couch while reading them. However, they were all 5-star reads, so just know that going into them. And also, if you are new to my channel, I do sort my wrap-ups via genre, so if you're looking for a certain genre, definitely check the timestamps down below. And yeah, with all that out of the way, I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. You can also hit the notification bell to be notified whenever I post new bookish content. You can also check out my Instagram and Goodreads, both linked down below. With all that out of the way, let's talk about the books I read in March. Alright, so starting off, I reread A Court of Frost and Starlight and A Court of Silver Flames for a read-along I was participating in last month. So, this was my second time reading A Court of Silver Flames. I have a full vlog if you want to check it out. I will leave it in the cards and in the description, but this is following Nesta and Cassian. So spoilers for A Court of Thorns and Roses, the original series. This takes place after A Court of Wings and Ruin and A Court of Frost and Starlight. And we're following Nesta, and Nesta is just dealing with the trauma of everything that went down in that war. She's really suffering on the inside, and because of this, she is kind of acting out. She's drinking all the time, she's living in a really bad part of the Night Court, and she's just isolated herself. So Rhys and Farah decide that they are going to try to set her on the right path, and they kind of give her an ultimatum. Either she gets herself together, trains with Cassian, lives in the House of the Wind, I believe that's the name of it, or they're gonna cut her off financially. So she ends up doing all of this, and while doing this, she meets some female friends, she starts to feel a little bit more empowered, and it's really her journey of healing and also getting to know Cassian. So, I do love parts of this story. I rated it 4 stars, so I don't hate this book by any means. There are just some little things that happen in this book that drive me a bit crazy in terms of the plot. Honestly, I love Nesta's story and seeing her growth, and I loved her relationship with Cassian. I also absolutely loved Nesta and the Valkyrie storyline. It was everything that didn't have to do with that I disliked. And I really can't get into it because it's going to give away so many spoilers, so if you want to hear my thoughts, check out that vlog. But yeah, rated this 4 stars. I rated it a little bit lower than the first time I read it, but I still did very much enjoy it. Alright, and next up we have House of Beating Wings, and this is by Olivia Wildenstien. So I saw this going around Bookstagram for a while. A lot of people were praising it as being very unique, and I did enjoy it. So we're following Fallon. So Fallon is a half-breed living in this fae community, and we know she's not full fae because she has rounded ears. So a lot of the high fae really look down on her. And she's able to communicate with beasts, which is a big no-no for this society. Because there are these water beasts that really have been plaguing her community, and when she is very young, she falls into the water, and instead of the beast trying to kill her, it tries to help her. So everyone in the fae community is a little bit worried about Fallon, but also she's a lesser fae, so they're not seeing her as a huge threat. So anyway, Fallon ends up having her first kiss from the high fae prince, Dante, and she is just infatuated with this man, despite him being not the best person. I hate that aspect of this book. I feel like our main character is very naive for more than half of this book, and it drove me bonkers. But anyway, so she's infatuated with Dante, and when she hears a prophecy that one day she could be the queen, she decides she has to fulfill this quest, and then her and Dante can be king and queen together and change things. So it is her story of trying to find these crows in order to eventually become queen. And I did enjoy it. I loved the world building of this book. It definitely has an Italian influence, and the writing is done in a way that I can completely imagine and visualize this world in my head. I can totally see the author's vision, and I think that was really, really well done. Now, the parts I didn't enjoy, definitely the main character and her naivety in the very beginning, the way Dante treats her, and this isn't a spoiler, you can tell right away that she probably should not be obsessed with this guy. There are so many red flags, And despite that, she just absolutely loves him. So that drove me a little bit insane. But overall, I really enjoyed the story. I really like where the story is going. So I really hope the sequel is released on audio very, very soon. All right, and this next book was easily one of my top reads of March, and that is Court of Blood and Bindings by Lisette Marshall. So this story follows Emmeline, and we find out right away that all of the people in her community are very fearful of the Fae. So all of the Fae live on these different islands, hence why it's called the Fae Isle series, and all of the Fae answer to the Mother. And the Mother's main, henchman is the Silent Death. Now, the Fae do all have wings, so they're very easy to identify, but they also use color magic. So the way this works is different colors can create different sorts of responses. So if you use red, that's used to destroy, and certain colors are used to heal, but then you can mix colors to create other magic. I loved it. I love this magic system. It kind of gave me Warbreaker by Sanderson vibes, but I just thought this was so unique, and I really enjoyed the magic system of this book. But anyway, so our main character ends up waking up one morning and she sees that her entire town is on fire, and she's like, oh no, this is bad. So she goes running outside, and that is where she sees the Silent Death. So the Silent Death ends up taking our main character to the Fae Isles, and it is her story, and she kind of discovers everything about the Fae and about magic, and I loved this. I listened to this in a day and a half. It was so good. I will say, yes, some people have criticized this for being a little too similar to ACOTAR. I see where you're getting at, and I do think there are some aspects that are pretty similar, but overall, the magic in this is just so cool, and I loved the story overall. I also really enjoyed the writing. So if you are thinking about picking this up, highly recommend. One of my favorite books I read in March. All right, and this next book was a little too similar to ACOTAR for me to really enjoy it, and that is House of Lies and Sorrow. So this is following a girl whose father ends up selling her to one of the 5 Fae princes in order to pay off a gambling debt. So unfortunately, we find out that all of the brides of this Fae prince have died before the wedding night. So this is a very bad situation to be in. Now, this Fae prince, I think his name was Wylan. I could be completely wrong. He is very protective of his soon-to-be bride because, hey, he doesn't want all of these humans being killed under his watch, and he doesn't know who the culprit is. So really the first book is just trying to figure out who is killing these women and why. So unfortunately, I didn't love this. It didn't work for me. I felt like, although the plot was very fast-paced, we get to the action right away, I would have liked a little bit more of angst and tension between the prince and the soon-to-be bride. It just kind of seems like she's thrown into this and then they're automatically working together. I was not a huge fan. It felt very Rhysand to me, the main guy. He's very good at killing. No one really goes up against him except for killing his soon-to-be wives. And yeah, I didn't love this. However, I do have friends that really enjoyed it. So if you want a book that is similar to ACOTAR, I would check this out. From what I remember, I did read this earlier in March. It wasn't super spicy. I think this might be YA or new adult. But yeah, didn't really work for me, but I would still give it a try if you want something similar to A Court of Thorns and Roses. All right, and I know a few of you have said you couldn't wait for my wrap-up because you want to see what I thought about this book, A Heart of Blood and Ashes. I did post a review on my Instagram. I'm not going to go into details just because I did read this for a vlog that is releasing towards the end of April. I think April 21st or April 22nd. So I will say, I gave this 5 stars. This is a new all-time favorite fantasy romance. I absolutely loved it. You can check out my Instagram for kind of a brief explanation of why I loved it, but definitely check that vlog out when it comes out. I break down every single thing I loved about this book. It was so good. It was just so good. So yeah, highly recommend. If you normally like the books that I enjoy, you will love this book. All right, and next up is a paranormal wide shoes romance. So this is Legacy of Shadows by Tessa Hale. So this was kindly sent to me from the author. This is actually the discreet cover, and I absolutely love it. I think it's beautiful. So this story is following Leighton, and at the beginning of the story, Leighton is a 17-year-old girl, and she's just going through it at home. Her mother is physically abusive, her stepfather is also physically and mentally abusive, and she just needs to get out. So along comes Colt. Now, Colt and Leighton used to be best friends. However, one day he just kind of disappeared from her life. And Colt says to Leighton, hey, come live with me and my roommates. This is a horrible situation you're living in, and we'll take care of you. So she does. She moves in with Colt and all of the roommates, and it is reverse harem or wide shoes, so you know what happens there. And then when she starts up at her new school, she starts to think that there might be more going on with these boys than she originally thought. And that's where all of like the paranormal aspects come into play. I don't want to say too much because it's going to ruin the story, but overall, I really, really enjoyed this. My one critique is I wish it was a little bit spicier, but this is only book 1 out of 3. So I'm thinking as you like progress through the series, it might get a little bit more spicy. But if you are a fan of Broken Bonds by J. Bree, I think you will absolutely love this. So highly, highly recommend. All right, and next up, I read the entire Shatter Me series, including all of the novellas. So I read this about a week and a half. I will have a vlog that is coming out the Wednesday after this video, and I actually really enjoyed this. So if you are unfamiliar with the Shatter Me series, it is a YA dystopian series, and we are following Juliet. Now, Juliet's skin is almost poisonous, so if you touch Juliet, you feel extreme agonizing pain, and you can actually die if you hold on to her skin for too long. So obviously, she has just lived a very isolated life. At the start of the book, she's actually in a mental institution, and is just trying not to go insane. So anyway, in Juliet's world, there's been some sort of like climate disaster, and a government body was able to like take advantage of this and is now controlling all of the world. So that body, or that government body decides that they are gonna use Juliet as a weapon. And the story is really about Juliet deciding that she is going to embrace her power and kind of take control of her life. And I absolutely loved it. There's also a bit of a love triangle that goes on, but somehow I did not have any of this story ruined for me. And I don't want to do that to you. So that is all I'm going to say in terms of the plot. But I love this. I thought this was so good. Also, did not feel like YA in the slightest, especially the last 3 books. I will say the very last book in this series, there are some horrible and graphic things that happen on page that I was just not expecting. And I know that I would not feel are really appropriate for YA, but also like, it was good. I really liked it. So overall, I did have a couple critiques with the story, but definitely if you want to check out that vlog, that's coming out soon. And that'll give you more details of how I feel about each individual book. But overall, in terms of like the overall series, I love the first 3 books the most. And I feel like you can definitely read those first 3 books as like their own series. But I also really enjoyed the last 3 books, although the romance does not play as much of a role. I mean, it's still in there, but like it's definitely more of like action in the last 3 books. But overall, highly recommend and definitely worth all of the hype. All right, so moving into dark romance, all of these books are either like taboo or forbidden or just have a darker feel. So first up, we have The Predator by Runyx. So this is the first in a series. I've been wanting to pick this series up for a while, and it's finally released via audio. Now, I wanted to love this. Unfortunately, I thought it was okay. So we're following Morana, and I'm pretty sure that's how you say her name, Morana. Anyway, she is like a computer genius, and she ends up making up this code that if it falls into the wrong hands, it could be really bad. Unfortunately, her ex-boyfriend kind of plays her, and her code does end up falling into the wrong hands. So she finds out that this guy named Tristan, who is the hitman for a rival mob, ends up having the code. So she like breaks into his house, tries to kill him. Obviously, he's like a skilled hitman, so it does not work. And it is their story, and they end up having to work together despite the fact that Tristan absolutely hates her upon meeting her in order to get this code to stop it from like ruining everything. So I did like, first of all, my biggest problem with this book is pacing. I feel like the first 3/4 of this book, I could care less. It was so slow. And I did enjoy like finding out the history of Tristan and like why he is the way he is. However, I feel like I was not invested in this book until the very end. Like the main character could have died and I would have been like, oh man, that stinks. Like I was just not at all invested, and I don't like feeling that, especially with romance. Like I want to ship that couple. And I still haven't picked up the second book, despite the fact that that audio has been available for a little while now. So yeah, I didn't love this. I think it's okay. If you want like a dark kind of Mafia type book, I would pick this up. Personally, just not for me. And next up, I read Twisted by Emily McIntire. This is the 4th book in the Never After series. So Hooked is the first book, and it is my absolute favorite. It is a Hook retelling, or a Peter Pan retelling. And then we have Scarred, which is The Lion King. Wretched, I haven't read, and I'm not really sure what that's based on. And then we have Twisted. Twisted is so good. I like it almost as much as Hooked. Hooked is still like number one, but this is such a close second. So this is following Julian and Yasmin, and Yasmin is the daughter of our Sultan character, and he's like the owner of this jewels company, and he's very, very rich, and he just wants Yasmin to settle down with someone who can run the company. Unfortunately, Yasmin is in love with our like Aladdin type character who's like a commoner, and she doesn't think her father is gonna approve. So in comes Julian. Julian is her father's like protege and right-hand man, and he just wants to be the most powerful man in the world, and he looks at Yasmin as like an issue. Like, she's probably gonna take over this company. He wants it. He'll probably end up killing her. So anyway, things end up falling into place where Julian proposes that Yasmin and him end up getting married. That way her father will be happy, will sign over the company, and then eventually Julian will either kill Yasmin or just divorce her and she can move in with the Aladdin character. And it goes from there. I love this, especially its age gap, which is like one of my favorites. Marriage of convenience is slowly becoming one of my favorite tropes. I didn't think I was a fan, but it also kind of has that like forced proximity in it, which I do love. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. I loved seeing Julian and Yasmin like slowly fall for each other, and it was just so good. So if you're a fan of the Never After series, highly recommend picking this up. So fun. All right, and next up I read Liar, and this is by Fiona Cole. I'm trying to read more of my books I get in book boxes. So this is the special edition from Hello Lovely. So this series is very reminiscent of like the Sarah Kate Salacious Players Club series. We are following people that go to the club Voyeur. So our main character in this is, I believe, like a 19 or 20-year-old girl. Actually, she's definitely in her teens, so younger girl. And she ends up having a very exciting experience with an older gentleman at Voyeur, but she doesn't think she's ever going to see him again. So I think like a year goes by, and then she comes home from college, goes to dinner with her family, and that gentleman is at her dinner table. So we find out that he is actually the best friend of her uncle that she's pretty close with. Now, the uncle doesn't know about their past and ends up having our main character become an intern for his best friend. So these two people are trying everything to like stop their connection, and like it doesn't end up working. So they end up sleeping together, and then a romance kind of blossoms, and it is their story. Now, I will say I do like the Sarah Kate series a little bit more, only because I feel like Sarah Kate's books, or Praise in all of those books, yes, they do have smut, but they also normally have a very emotional story that you like really connect with the characters. This, not so much. I really didn't love this couple. Like, I didn't feel connected to them. The smut was good. It just didn't have as much of like an emotional impact as the Salacious Players Club books. But yeah, if you want something similar, I would definitely check this out. And next up, I read 2 books by Jenika Snow. So the first one is Take My Dad, I'll Take Yours, which is a age gap novella. And if you follow me on Instagram, you probably saw that this book made me have like a horrifying incident. So super quick story time. I had to get an oil change. So I've been going to the same place to get my oil changed for the last like 2 years. And after they change the oil, they normally vacuum and clean your car, which is awesome. So I go there and I'm getting ready to pay. And the guy was like, oh, we found like a couple books under your seat. So we put them on your passenger seat before we vacuumed. And I was like, oh yeah, no big deal. And I couldn't even think of like what books I had in my car. This was the book. This is the book that they saw, that they put on my passenger side seat. And now, like, do I never go back? Because, like, out of all of the books, why? I was absolutely horrified. I will not be going back to that oil change place. I am just so embarrassed. But anyway, the book was okay. Like I said, it is a novella, so it's really short. And what happens is this girl ends up going to I think she's at, like, not the wedding, but like the wedding practice, and there's this older guy there, and she ends up sleeping with him, only to find out that it's gonna be her stepmother's, or it is her stepmother's father, and then they end up having a relationship, and it's just super smutty, fun time. If you like daddy kink and age gap, you will love this. And yeah, it was fun. And next up, I listened to The Good Side of Wrong by Jenika Snow. This was such an impulse buy. I have no idea what made me buy this, but I listened to it in one sitting, and it was really good. It reminds me a lot of Dangerous Temptation by Gianna Darling, which I feel like is a very like underhyped duology, but it's one of my absolute favorites by her. But anyway, Good Side of Wrong is a Hades and Persephone retelling. We're following this girl that finds out that both of her parents have been killed or have died, and she is now going to have to live with her step-uncle, despite the fact that she's 18 years old. So the step-uncle pretty much has complete control over her because he has control over her money, and he wants to get revenge on his stepbrother, who was her father. And then obviously they end up in a sexual relationship, and that's how it works. But I really enjoyed this. One sitting, it was really fun, it was really smutty, it was really dark, but it was great. So highly recommend. It's probably one of my favorites by Jenika Snow. Her writing is like really hit or miss with me. She also is the writer of The Beast and the Hunter, which I have talked about at length on this channel because they are some monster romances that they're a little too much for me, but I feel like this one was like the perfect amount of everything. So highly recommend if you're looking for a taboo, spicy novella. All right, this next book. So this next book was in my popular books I absolutely hate video that I will leave linked in the cards and in the description. And that is Requiem, and this is by Callie Hart. So I can't get into why I dislike this book because it gives away all of the spoilers, but we are following Sorrel, and Sorrel is being trained to kill this guy named Theo. So Theo and Sorrel and Rachel were at a party where Theo ends up driving home drunk and Rachel ends up dying. And for some reason, Theo didn't get any sort of punishment for this. So Sorrel decides that she's gonna get revenge on Theo herself. So she decides to enlist in his school. She gets there and she's just ready for revenge. And that is where the story starts. And it goes from there. So I dislike this book because it has a certain trope that I just absolutely hate in romance. I didn't even realize I hated it until I was going through my video of popular books I hate and was like, oh, a lot of these books feature this exact same thing. So yeah, I was not a fan, did not enjoy this. However, people absolutely love this book. Tori from Novel Life, I only have very similar reading taste to her. This is one of her absolute favorite books, so definitely give this a try if it sounds like something you would like. I have a lot of friends that have really enjoyed this, but personally, this did not work for me. All right, and next up is another book that was super high up on my list of books I read in March, and that is June 1st by Jennifer Hartmann. So this book is so emotional and so taboo, but it's also phenomenal. So Jennifer Hartmann is slowly becoming one of my absolute favorite romance authors just because her books are emotional and hard-hitting, but the romances are still epic. So this is following Brant and June. At the beginning of the story, Brant is playing with his best friend, and he finds out that his best friend's mother is about to have a baby. And they both say how they can't wait for his best friend to be a big brother, and he's gonna protect this girl, and it's really cute. Unfortunately, something very tragic happens, and then Brant has to go live with his best friend's family, which means he is now the stepbrother of June. So he makes a promise to June when she's a baby that he is always going to take care of her and protect her, and he is going to be her person. And it's their relationship spanning about 14 to like 20 years, and it was so good. And honestly, I am not someone who loves step-sibling romances. They can come off super cringy, and honestly, this book had everything that would make me hate it. I really don't love when the siblings like grow up together. I feel like most step-sibling romances that I really enjoy, or like taboo age gap romances, are like if the parents got together like super late and like they don't grow up together and like share memories of childhood. This book definitely has that, but for some reason, I wanted this couple to get together so badly. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. Definitely check trigger warnings, and also it is a step-sibling age gap romance, so if you are not a fan of that, do not read this book. But overall, this is one of my absolute favorite Jennifer Hartmann books. 5 stars, I absolutely love this. And last up is a contemporary romance. I guess I only read one this month, and that is Between Hello and Goodbye, and this is by Emma Scott. Now, Emma Scott is notorious for making me ugly cry, so this book really kind of reminds me of like Someone Else's Ocean and Full Tilt. If those two books got together and had a baby, this is the baby. So we are following Faith, and she is just like this party girl. She's working, I forget what she does exactly, but she's working in New York City, and her boss thinks that like she has a lot of potential and wants to make her a partner, but she's just partying and she's not taking anything really seriously. So she ends up going on vacation to Hawaii to try to find herself, and that is where she meets Asher. Asher is this super attractive firefighter who lives in Hawaii so he can be close to his younger brother, and he's just all about family. So they decide they're gonna hook up, and whatever they do, they're just gonna have fun. They're not gonna do long distance. Obviously, that changes as soon as she's supposed to leave or Faith is supposed to go back home, and they have a long distance relationship, and it is their love story. Wow, I was not prepared. I started reading this and I was like, oh man, people say this book's so emotional. I think it's fine. And then I was sobbing. sobbing on the couch. I think this is a beautiful story. It also really shows how long distance, it can work, but it is just so hard. For anyone who's been in a long distance relationship, it is so taxing, and just like loving someone and them not being with you, it just hurts. So overall, I really enjoyed this. I will probably read any book that comes out by Emma Scott. I love her writing. I love the way she writes those like emotional moments. And another 5-star read. All right, guys, those are all the books that I read in March. Please let me know down in the comments below if you have read any of the books I mentioned, which one is your favorite, which one didn't you like. And I said this already, I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday, and if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. I will see you all next week. Bye.